now. In 1755, George Washington was just a young colonel in the Virginia militia, approximately 19 years of age. As a young colonel in the Virginia militia, he was given the command of the militia unit of the state, of the colony, of the area of Virginia. At that point, he was young, and those militiamen would march out, and they'd already defend their borders and prepare for any hostile attack, whether it be French, Spanish, or Indian. And there they were in 1755, England and America, before the American Revolution, married together and fighting for a just cause to establish colonies in America from any invasion and any other foreign power trying to take over the possession of the British Commonwealth. And so there was Washington enjoying himself and doing a good job, growing and enjoying wanting to go to the sea and learning how to be a farmer and a surveyor and doing all the kind of things that you do when you're growing up. And with a responsibility at 19 of a great position of being a captain in the Virginia militia. Well, one day he went out to a place called Fort Duquesne to bargain with the French commander there, because about that time in 1750s the French were trying to desire to acquire more American possessions, and it was eventually going to lead to the French and the Indian War. And so Washington tries to go to the commander at Fort Duquesne and try to reason with him and ask him if he would just surrender the area. And of course, that's a kind of silly thing to do. You think the guy's going, oh yeah, sure, we want to give up all this territory. We own everything from the Great Lakes down to what we call today Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, everything from the Appalachians out to the central section of America. That's all ours. You just want us to roll over and play dead, and sure, forget it. Go back and tell your English commander there's no way that we're going to give up this land. And so Washington goes back, and in that story of Washington going back, he runs into some most fascinating circumstances. He almost drowns. He's in a raft, and his pole is hits with an iceberg or ice chip, and it throws him off into the water, freezing water, almost drowns, but providentially God protects him. Another time an Indian jumps out from a tree, an Indian called Half King, takes his gun out and point blank shoots George Washington in the chest. The gun misfires and it doesn't go off. It saves his life. In two instances he's saved during that campaign going up to Fort Duquesne. He goes back to Dinwiddie, the governor of Virginia, and he says, bad news, they won't do it. So eventually, about that time, the French were escalating soldiers, and England and France were already fighting, and so just a matter before that repercussions would fall on America, and the English and the French would fight here in the colonies. And so that led to the French and the Indian War. Now children, the reason why it's called French-Indian, it's because it's not the French fighting the Indians, but it's the French going to the Indians going, listen, you don't want the English, they're worse than the French. They won't give you tobacco, they don't share guns with you, they're really mean, therefore you side with us, and when the Americans come, you Indians and us Frenchmen will beat them up. And so the English, they came along and they go, well listen, they got the French and the Indians against us, so what we're going to do is we're going to get the Americans and the English together against the French and the Indians. So the British came over and they brought a general by the name of Braddock. General Braddock was one of the best fighting generals in Europe. In his 50s, he was a veteran of war, fought all over Europe, very well trained, and he had English troops. The English troops had fought all over Europe. They're undefeatable. And so they brought them over. The only problem is Braddock is now foreign territory. So what does he do? He asks, does anybody know how to even get out to Fort Duquesne? And guess whose name was offered? You guessed it, George Washington. And so there was George Washington. He shows up at 19 or 20 years of age, and he goes, he says, can you get us out there? He goes, oh, yes, sir, I'm privileged to take you out there. I know the area. I've been out there. I've walked out there. And he says, well, this is the situation. We have all these soldiers, all this baggage, all these wagons, and just get out there. He says, well, this is the first problem. Not too bad having the soldiers. We may need them. But the problem is we're gonna have to have, there's no way for all these baggage carts. We're going to have to march single file. We're out in primitive area. This isn't like English with fancy country roads. I mean, I'm talking about boonies. I mean, there's places where you can't even walk 2 or 3 abreast. You have to just walk single file to march through the woods. And there's Indian trails and deer trails that we're going to be following. He says, well, then we'll cut roads in there and we'll make roads to get out there. I go, well, then how do you sneak up on the French and Indian cutting trees? Timber! And knocking trees to sneak up on French Indians. I don't think that's going to work very well. And so you can see it's destined to be a fiasco. But General Braddock, more indignant, says, how dare you question General Braddock? I am General Braddock. I am the greatest fighting military genius. You know, on and on he goes with his braggadocio, how great he is. And so you're just going to do what I tell you. He goes, okay, whenever you say. And so they would make a snail pace of 2-3 miles a day. sometimes. And then as they're moving out there, they have their wagons. Well, I always kind of humorously think, you know what some of their wagons were? Some of their wagons were powder wagons. But their powder wagons wasn't black powder, it was talcum powder, so they could powder their wigs in the afternoon. Because they have to powder their wigs. These are gentlemen fighting now. And they had tea wagons, so they have to have tea every afternoon, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, powder their wigs, have tea with biscuits, and just sit down and have the little tea tables there, and they'd sit down and have their tea. This is Englishmen. They even do this in England now. I've been there twice, and they have high tea every afternoon. Everybody, all the people close shop, and you just have their high tea with their biscuits, and they haven't changed in all these generations. So Washington thinks this is kind of ridiculous. I mean, you don't know what we're up against. This is savages out in the wilderness. I mean, this isn't England anymore, and even these Frenchmen are like fighting American style. I mean, they're primitive Frenchmen. They're not like European Frenchmen that fight reserved like you're used to in England. But they did making this snail plane, knocking trees down, and they finally get to Monongahela River, and the river's fairly wide, so they ford the river, and they cross the river, and the way the river's meandering, they got to kind of make 2 crossings with some feeder streams, so they're making several crossings of water. Now what's happening in Washington this time, George Washington this time, he's getting sick. He's very sick. In fact, he almost dies. His sickness is so bad, but he's recovering now. And so around July 2nd or 3rd, he's strong enough that his health is coming back. And on July 9th, 1755, he mounts his horse for the first time in days from a perilous sickness, and his strength is enough to where he can ride horse. He tells the Virginia men, the colonists, who look civilized. I mean, some of them are just wearing clothing like I am. They're not wearing fancy uniforms. Others are wearing like buckskin clothing. You have at that time Daniel Boone out there. You have all the famous men that fought in the American Revolution are at the French Indian War. Benjamin Franklin's involved, bringing food supplies to the soldiers from Philadelphia. And so all these things are happening. And so he tells his men, he says, watch out. He says, I have a feeling we're going to be caught in an ambush. And that's exactly what happened. What happened is the French and the Indians were fighting against one another who would be in command. The Indians in pride says, we're in charge. The French says, no, we're in charge. The Indians says, no, we're in charge. We know the area. And the French says, yeah, but we give you the guns. And so they waste so much opportunity that they missed a perfect time of attacking in the water. And so they did the next best thing. About 7 miles from the fort, they hid themselves in a ravine and were waiting for the English to come. Now, this is the kind of horn that they had back in those days. And these horns were like bugles. And you'd have these horns, and maybe you heard that, what means bring cannons. And you hear this. It might mean charge. And so you learn different sounds to do different things. And so on the battlefield, this is the exact replica of the kind of horn they had then. Now that we covered some ground that's asides that were important, let's go back to George Washington. They're now going towards Fort Duquesne. Da 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 da. Do 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 boom boom boom. And now we're going to fight you at Fort Duquesne. No sneaking up on them. How dare you sneak up on people? We're Englishmen. So the idea was they're used to fighting in Europe. The way you fight in Europe, you have the Frenchman comes up there to the Englishman. He says, in English, he says, I say there, chap, I want to show an array of arms, which you present your soldiers and savages so that we can engage in battle. Monsieur, I presume that you want to fight. I say that's exactly what I'm saying. And so they would all agree. This is the way they fought in Europe. And it'd be like a football game. You get them 50-yard line, and you got them at the goalpost. And everybody kind of faces each other, and they look at each other. And no one's allowed to shoot until they give permission. It wouldn't be fair to do that. And so both commanders nod their head, or they drop their handkerchief. And as the handkerchief drops, the whole front row is kind of sitting prepared to battle. They've got all this trained. They've been doing this for years. And the whole front row takes their gun, and they just go boom, 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 the whole, and then the second row, fire, third row, fire, front row, fire, second row, fire. Why do they stagger their shots? Do you know that? Load and fire. Takes 17 seconds to load and fire. You can't do this real quick. You have to do it. You have to do it in 17 seconds. So by the time the back row is shot, the front row is ready. So they're all ready to go, and you go now. They teach you how to die too. This is training. They've been doing this for years. For example, the front row, if you're shot, you go. You wouldn't go like this. Oh, I'm going home, Mama. Because if you stand up, the guy's shooting in the back of the head. So. The front row has to go, ow, they shot me. And you just drop right where you are. They'll teach you how to. The second row's got a problem. The second row, when they shoot, you go, boom. If you fall straight back, you're about to knock your shooting arm if someone's about to shoot. So, you get shot, and they teach you look around in the front row for a place where you can fall forward. and hopefully fall on a body of a comrade that's already been shot so that you don't knock a shooting arm of a guy that's still standing or sit and squatting. So you go, they got me. Let's see, right there, cheerio, chop, and you fall over that guy. Now, the back row's got it made. You get shot, you just fall over backwards, and so you're out there and not letting it. These are actually, they trained and drilled this way. And so these guys are now going da 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 da, and they're going out expecting the French to be there, and they're not there. They're ambushed. Bullets are flying and so General Braddock orders full assembly, just like I told you, front, middle, back, in all directions. Sometimes they put them this way, they put them this way, they put them this way, and they put them this way, so that the whole thing is boxed in. And they go, fire, boom, 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 boom. They go, what are we shooting at? Shoot at bushes, shoot at smoke, shoot at something moving. Boom, boom, boom. And they're shooting, these guys just dropping. Boom. It's like shooting turkeys in a shooting gallery, just go boom, boom, boom. And they go, don't. And they're just dropping. They're dropping everything. The commander's on horses. And you want to command a horse because he goes from rank to rank, is strengthening, encouraging his men. But you shoot commanders on horses. They're trained to do that. Shoot that man. He's an officer. Boom! He's shot. And within a matter of moments, of the 87 officers, 75% of them are shot and killed, and they're off their horses. I mean, Governor Braddock, when he saw the Americans, they were smart. They are behind trees and bushes, and they're just loading fire. And loading fire. And Braddock was so mortified, he'd jump off his horse, draw his sword, swat him on the rear end, get out there and fight like men. And he tried to get the Americans to move out there and fight like men, but it's more like fighting like idiots. And so these guys out there just dropping, and the Americans had more sense than the British and French. I mean, the British who were trained to fight like this in Europe. And so it was a fiasco. Meanwhile, eventually, Braddock is shot. He falls off he had several horses shot out from underneath him. He gets on another horse. Finally, the bullet goes in his back. He is just kind of falling aside. He's dropping dead, and he's breathing heavy. And Washington comes up to him. He goes, he says, "What's the situation?" Like he says, "Sir, 75% of all the soldiers are shot and mortally wounded. The officers are shot, and you're one of the few commanding officers left, and you're wounded. And what do we do?" And Braddock says, "Take the fort, get on your horse, you're in command." Now, Washington at that time was an AD camp. So, George Washington is now on a horse, bringing his men into. They're panicking. The British are just dropping their guns. Yeah, get him! And they're just running away. And that's terrible. He's the strength of the army. Just panicking, dropping their backpacks, just running off. And so Washington is trying to hold them back. Oh, don't run. You're panicking. The Indians just come and swoop down on you. And so Americans hold them back. A lot of times he'd send the Americans to flush out the French and the Indians so the British could shoot them. And the British were so panicking when they saw something moving, they began to shoot the Americans thinking they were French and Indians. So they're shooting their own soldiers, basically, their own helpers. And it's just terrible. And so Washington is charging back and forth. Boom! His horse is shot. He goes flying through the air, falls on the ground, and he looks dead. I mean, that's a long fall. Tall man, charging horse, flying through the air. He's on the ground. So they go, that's it. One of the last few officers, they start to run. But he jumps back up, grabs another stray horse, and says, "Oh, no, you don't. Get back there. Get back in the position. Hold the line. Those British are panicking. We got to hold them back. Hold them back. Fire low." Charging back and forth with his horse. At one point in the narrative, he gets a cannon, goes to the cannon, and says, "Come on, I need 6 of you men." Takes several men to load a cannon. You prime the charger. Pull the charger. But none of these men want to charge up there, and bullets are flying everywhere. At the Battle of Fort Necessity, that was just prior. Remember when he went to the fort to negotiate with the Frenchmen to surrender? At Fort Necessity, this tells you a little bit of the character of George Washington. He said that there was bullets flying all over, and he said there was something charming about bullets flying by his ear, that the guy's got problems. But at 21 years of age, that's what happens to you. You have problems. And so he's just young and inexperienced. I mean, just like the thrill of battle, yeah. And now Washington said later on that he said his companions were being leveled on every side of him. I mean, he's charging back and forth. Boom! Horse is shot for the second time. Flies through the air. Could you imagine charging steed, flying through the air, your body's 6'1" or 2, hitting the ground? I mean, he doesn't get on another horse. Well, I wouldn't have done that after the first horse. So he got on 2 horses. I mean, it took him a little longer to learn that lesson. But now he's on the ground with these men. Okay, hold the fire. I mean, he's just like that. He's loading, putting the powder in there. I mean, you're doing all this, and they're shooting at you while you're stopping to load your gun. I mean, very calmly, you pull back, you get a little powder in your pan, and he's charging, and boom, he trips over and falls behind a dead body behind him. He's on the ground, and he gets back up, and he goes over to this place, he's back up and falls to the ground again, and he's back up and shooting, and finally, tripping, falling, fighting, standing, shooting, all these things are happening in this confused battlefield, and finally he says, okay, take Governor Braddock and bring Edward Braddock, the general, and pick him up and start moving them back, because they didn't want to sacrilegiously, the Indians would take the body and cut it in pieces, and that would be bad. So he's picking up the general and moving them back, and all the soldiers are back, and they leave. The Indians swoop in like vultures, and they take soldiers' clothing and watches and pocket knives and all the kind of things, just scavengers, basically, just taking what they can. And it's a defeat. It's July 9th, 1755, the battle is over. That night, later that day, as Washington's back at camp, Edward Braddock dies. The last words out of Edward Braddock's mouth is, "Who would have thought?" Well, Washington tried to warn him. And the men bring Washington's hat. Says, "Sir, we brought your hat back." And he goes, "Thank you, man. I dropped it somewhere in the battlefield." Well, here it is. And he's got his tricorn hat back, and they look at it and says, "General, there's a bullet hole in it." He goes, "Well, there is." Obviously, the bullet hole had to be when the hat was on the ground, or it had to be somewhere, because when you wear a hat like this to have a bullet hole in it, it means the bullet hole would be in your head, because there's no hollow brim here. It just all fits put over your head. And so he's, goes, "Well, I'll have to get someone to sew that up for me." And then they says, "Sir," they're kind of looking at him, staring at him. Says, "I don't know if you noticed the things, but you got some problems, General. Your coat at the back has a bullet hole." And he looks back at his coat and goes, "My gracious, there's a bullet hole right there." Stuck his finger to it. And he says, "Sir, you have one on the other side." "Oh, one over there too." And I don't know how to tell you this, but General, he was at that time an aide camp, an assistant general. He said, "Well, Washington, you've been shot 4 times. 4 times. Is there blood back there? I mean, he just a young man. There's got to be blood or somewhere down here. Where's all the blood? I don't understand it." And there was no blood. 4 bullets were passed through his coat and no blood on his body. A bullet through his hat and no blood in his head. What would you call that? A miracle is where men are being leveled on every side, and then you get bullets to your coat where you should be leveled, and you don't get leveled. That's a miracle. This is interesting where America's come. Shows you what's happening here in a minute. So I'll get to the conclusion. Washington finds out that his brother thinks he's dead because the report went out that he had been shot 4 times. They didn't even mention the hat. And he had 2 horses shot out from underneath him. He writes his brother, and he says, and we have a copy of the letter, "Dear Jack, I understand that you thought I've been killed. I had 2 horses shot out from underneath me and 4 bullets passed through my coat." And he writes this letter because he's kind of in a polite way saying, "Don't get your hands on my inheritance. I'm still alive." As he's trying to say, "Don't lick your chops yet, brother. I'm alive." And then he said, watch this, "Divine providence protected me beyond measure." Now, what we do wrong in America today by looking at our founding fathers, we say, well, divine providence, that just meant they all said that. It's like saying, "Have a nice day." I mean, that's what the way a modern secular unbelievers want to dismiss divine providence in this kind of ethereal, kind of like have a nice day attitude. It's not at all that way. The way they use divine providence, they were more conservative than we are in their speech. It'd be like today if your mortgage payment is due and you haven't told a single person but the Lord, and you're praying to the Lord, and one day you go to the mailbox, and when you're in the mailbox, you open it up, and your mortgage payment is $893 a month. And when you open the mailbox, there's a check from Aunt Martha, who felt led of the Lord for some reason to send you a little money, and that money is $893. And you go to your husband, "Husband, incredible, Aunt Martha sent us $893. You're both Christians, and you go, "Praise God. Hallelujah. That is so great." That's how modern people talk. Back in those days, they would have said, "Oh, Jehovah has provided. The divine providence of God is so great." See, the respect for God was a little bit different than ours today. We just casually go, "Oh, praise God, hallelujah, He's great, hallelujah." And his little attitudes just different. I mean, they still love the Lord equally, but there was a little bit more reserved in their expression. But it's not to say they're deists. See, that's what they'll do in our nation. They go, "Oh, Franklin, deist, Thomas Jefferson's a deist. George Washington's a Mason deist. All these guys are, deists, and they don't really have they're not like born again Christians. I mean, our nation wasn't founded by Christians. It was founded by just people who like politics. That's kind of the modern way of interpreting it. It's totally different. The story gets even more amazing. 15 years later, he's surveying the battlefield where he fought, because the people who fought in that war never got restitution by the government. They never got paid. So Washington is a surveyor, and he said to Congress, if you will let us survey the land, we will be happy for payment in property. That's great. Free property? Get out there and survey. So he's out there with a small surveying party, and his lifelong friend, Dr. Craik, is with him. Dr. Craik was with him during the French Indian War, and Dr. Craik was with him when he died at Mount Vernon in 1799. Dr. Craik is a lifelong friend. We have all this documented, so I'm not making this up. All this is testified. One day, Indians come in. Indians! They grabbed guns, but they knew it was peaceful, and these Indians were hostile, but just to be safe. But one Indian speaks English. Interpreter says, white man, we no come fight, come speak to you. Put your guns down, men. Guns are put down. Indian comes up and say, my chief, he come many moon to see white man that fight in great battle in Monongahela many moons ago. You great soldier. He goes, you mean me? Yeah, you he want him talk to. He know you here. He come many moons to talk to you. He fight in great battle. Oh yeah, you mean he was there? That's July 9th, 1755. I remember quite well. I was there. He know. Come speak to him. So Washington comes up. Now normally you greet an Indian. You keep your elbows at your side. You extend your hands. He does the exact same thing. This is a formality. Then you walk up to them and you embrace each other and you begin to pat each other along the shoulders all the way down. Why are you doing this? Weapons. All protection. And where do you think you get ideas from that? How about Jehu in the Bible? He goes up and they pull out the knife and he stabs the king. I think Erod stabs him right there in the third rib. Joab, same thing. He kills Amasa on the rib, drops his sword, fakes him out, and kills Amasa. Totally, and David says it because he died like a fool. He wasn't prepared in front of an enemy. So Indians go, I trust you, you trust me, but let's hug anyway. And so they would hug and check each other out. Mountain men did this all the time when they met with Indians. So when Washington went up to greet the Indian wasn't really quite ready to greet Washington. He kind of stood back and analyzed him, and Washington said, that's kind of strange. I know he doesn't have weapons because we're in peacetime, but yet he doesn't want to greet me. So Washington asked for tobacco, to bring some tobacco, give some tobacco to the chief. All this is testified. One day, Indians come in. Indians! They grabbed guns, but they knew it was peaceful, and these Indians were hostile, but just to be safe. But one Indian speaks English. Interpreter says, white man, we no come fight, come speak to you. Put your guns down, men. Guns are put down. Indian comes up and say, my chief, he come many moon to see white man that fight in great battle in Monongahela many moons ago. You great soldier. He goes, you mean me? Yeah, you he want him talk to. He know you here. He come many moons to talk to you. He fight in great battle. Oh yeah, you mean he was there? That's July 9th, 1755. I remember quite well. I was there. He know. Come speak to him. So Washington comes up. Now normally you greet an Indian. You keep your elbows at your side. You extend your hands. He does the exact same thing. This is a formality. Then you walk up to them and you embrace each other and you begin to pat each other along the shoulders all the way down. Why are you doing this? Weapons. All protection. And where do you think you get ideas from that? How about Jehu in the Bible? He goes up and they pull out the knife and he stabs the king. I think Erod stabs him right there in the third rib. Joab, same thing. He kills Amasa on the rib, drops his sword, fakes him out, and kills Amasa. Totally, and David says it because he died like a fool. He wasn't prepared in front of an enemy. So Indians go, I trust you, you trust me, but let's hug anyway. And so they would hug and check each other out. Mountain men did this all the time when they met with Indians. So when Washington went up to greet the Indian wasn't really quite ready to greet Washington. He kind of stood back and analyzed him, and Washington said, that's kind of strange. I know he doesn't have weapons because we're in peacetime, but yet he doesn't want to greet me. So Washington asks for tobacco, to bring some tobacco, give some tobacco to the chief. And so here this chief doesn't, that's how chiefs are. And so Washington does the next thing, let's feed them. You don't have to ask twice to feed them because it's like, it's hospitality and there's no food markets, fast food convenience stores on the way out to see Washington. So who knows when they ate last. So bring it on. And so now they're all kind of eating together, Indian and white men together, eating and talking and fellowshipping and trying to get to know each other. And those that could speak Indian or speak that dialect and speak English, and they're trying to communicate best. And the chief is just staring at Washington. That would give you the EBGBs. Just staring and staring. And then all of a sudden the chief begins his discourse as he's talking to Washington, as Washington's there waiting, and he goes, ikohotaha shunda, inde hetohotaha, abakato ihite shitoho, avate. And the interpreter's hearing, and he goes to Washington. Many moons ago, when the white man blood mixed and stream by Monongahela, Fort Duquesne, my chief say he was chief of great tribe. Frenchmen teach him Indian how to shoot musket in great fort. He know when you come to battle with English, he see all fighting. He was chief telling Indian to fight. When then he see you on horse, he take you as like much officer. And he say, they're a great officer. All Indian, level musket, he gave command. Shoulder musket, fire, he give command, fire. And they all fire and no hit you. He say, load musket. They all load muskets. Shoulder musket, fire, he give command, fire. Only hit your horse. He's great. Disappointment, he says, you no shoot, give opportunity again. Load musket, shoulder musket, give command, fire, he fire. And he no hit you. Chief angry. He say, give me musket. And so chief, he take a musket himself. He going to show. He know how to shoot. He take musket. He load musket and put cap a ball and cock back. Fire you. He no hit you. He good shoot. He said, you try one more time. Pretty soon he cannot hit you. And he changed. He said, you see white man on horse. He no fight like English. He fight like Indian. He great man. No shoot him no more. And so he give Indian command not to point musket to shoot you no more, because he say, you great man. He want to see this great man in great battle. And so Washington is astounded by all this. He didn't know all these things were going on. This is 15 years later, and he says, tell the chief that he's a good shot. Don't hurt his feelings. One ball went through my hat, 3 of them went through my coat, and there was those 2 horses that shot up for me. I don't know where the bullets went, but they went through my coat somewhere, and they didn't hit my body. It's good shooting. I don't know Indian. I just make it up. Sounds good to me. And I was this kind of kid growing up. I told you I was weird. I used to go around the house going, hot dogs again, Mom? Oh, too much Davy Crockett movies or something. I don't know what's wrong with me. Is that I was this weird kid that no one knew what to do with growing up. And I was misfit. I flunked the first grade. I got bad report cards. I barely got to junior high, elementary school. I got notes on my report card. I still have them. It says, your son's retarded. I was this retarded kid. And they took me to psychiatrists because they didn't know what to do with a retarded boy. And so my mom, the psychoanalyzed me, and they saw that I wasn't retarded. I just was this problem. I couldn't talk to anybody. I mean, my attention span was like I would just be bouncing all the wall up and down and just nervous wreck for people. And my aunt and uncle didn't like me to come over because I'd trying to look through the drawers in the bedroom, and I just nervous, had to look in every closet, and I couldn't sit still for more than a minute. And you say, you listening to me? I'm listening, Dad. And no concentration. Some of you have kids like that. And I always say that just be encouraged, because look at me, I'm very normal now, and it's going to be okay. God's going to do something with those kids, and something special. So in Washington, I said, well, what's your chief say? He say, after he know that you no get shoot, and he come to see you, all these many moons, he have to tell you something. He know that you will be great leader of great people. People no born now will come to this great land and say that you great leader. For the Great Spirit, He will watch over you. He will guard all the paths that you walk, all the days that you walk on earth. And he just sort of got up and walked away. Washington kind of scratched his head like, wow, that's great. Like, that's amazing. How did he get that? The Lord moved that Indian to speak and give Washington a word. How did he know? That was 15 years after 1755, 1770. How did he know by 1775 he would be asked to be the commander of all the forces, and by 1776 he would be the general of the first major battle of Long Island that I'll do in church tomorrow, and that he would fight for all those years? How did he know he'd be the first president of the United States? And how did he know that years later he'd be the first postal stamp? How did he know that he'd be on a dollar bill? How did he know that he'd be the state of Washington, Washington, D.C.? All those things, nation after generation, has honored George Washington. The Lord had set him apart. Now, what I just told you is a historical story. Watch this by show of hands. It's very shocking. How many of you in this room went to government public educational systems growing up? Would you raise your hand? That's too bad. Put your hands down. We had no choice. There was only Baptist and Catholic schools in those days. I went to 3 years of Catholic school. How many of you ever had your teacher back in the good old days, 50s and 60s, tell you that George Washington was shot 3 times, one through his hat, 2 horses shot up from underneath him, that told his brother that his companions were being leveled on every side, that divine providence protected him, that pastors gave sermons based on this very event all over the colonies, and that an Indian came 15 years later to say, I tried specifically to shoot you and I never missed my mark, and I couldn't hit you 17 times. I shot alone and tried to hit you, and after 17 shots, I figured that you better not be shot at all because God's watching over you. And then I came later and told him that prophecy. How many of you heard that from your teacher growing up? Would you raise your hand? There's something suspicious, isn't it? And what that would have done for you as a child, you would have run home excited, and maybe when Dad came home for dinner, you would say, Dad, Mom, I've been waiting all night for this. I could hardly wait for you to come home so that we could have dinner. Dad, did you know that George Washington shot 4 times, a bullet went through his hat, and horses underneath him, and Indian tried to shoot him 17 times, and he didn't get hit, and it was just the most amazing thing. His guys are being dropped on every side, and Dad, is the most incredible story. My teacher told me today in our history class. It's just so exciting, Dad. Wow, Mom, almost as an aside, do you think that God is still alive like that today? Do you think that God can watch over me too? Son, though 1,000 fall at the left or 1,000 fall at your right, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. The arrows that fly by night and day, according to Psalm 90, you'll be protected, son. The same God of George Washington is the God that we serve in this home. And he's the same God that's just as real as he was when he saved David from Goliath years ago. Wow, Mom. That's so exciting, Dad. When I grow up, I'm going to be like George Washington. Now, what makes a little boy so starry-eyed with little tears in his eyes like, I can do that too? It's because he was taught history from a Christian perspective. See, when you know your past, it totally alters what you become in life. It's the key to getting your house in order. It's important to instill the principles of our founding fathers upon this nation. And the Bible makes that so clear. But there's also references like that in Psalm 106 and Psalm 107. There's references like that in Deuteronomy and teachings like what you're about to hear here. Look at this concept that you'll find very necessary for our first part before we move on to our second part. Give ear, my people, in Psalm 78. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will speak to you with my mouth a parable. I will tell you a dark saying of old. King James Version, what he's trying to say. I'm going to tell you a story from the old days. I'm going to tell you a history story. We heard these stories. Our fathers told us the stories. We knew the stories that we would not hide them from our children. We're going to show the generation to come the praise of the Lord, the strength of the Lord, and the wonderful works that He's done. What do? You show strength, wonders, and praise. What happens when you tell a story from God's perspective like that, you go, wow, praise God. You can't help it. You go, that is exciting.